understanding. So I'm joined now by Professor William Gumede. Professor, thanks so much for making the time to speak to us. You actually advised some of the people in that room as to their strategy going into this meeting. And you think it went quite well. Tell us about, first of all, who was in the room and why you think it was a success.
My biggest fear was, first, thank you for inviting me to talk to you. My biggest fear was that it would be a Zelensky type of fallout in the glare of the global media, I think. But I am very positive in a way it turned out. I thought it was fair. The big thing for me was for President Ramaphosa to bring in a South African incorporate process, meaning bringing in business, bringing civil society in, and bringing in the non-ANC partners of South Africa's national coalition government. I think that helped soften this meeting. If it was just ANC people in this meeting, I think it would have been a full-blown out Zelensky type of fallout. So I think it actually turned out much better than had been expected a couple of weeks ago.
So when you say you wanted a cross-section of what South Africa represents, not just the ANC, the ruling party that was responsible for a lot of the pushback against apartheid, who was in that room and why? Just give us a couple of big names.
Some key figures in that room. For example, there was Johan Rupert. He really is one of South Africa's top business people, internationally well known. A lot of skin in the game in South Africa and also in the US. And I think, having him on board played into the tone of the Trump administration. The Trump administration, Trump himself, respect competitive business leaders who've done well. So it's very good to have Rupert there. Then we had John Steenhuisen, and he's the leader of the Democratic Alliance, the second largest party in South Africa. The party that used to be in opposition, but now part of the national government. Really important, because South Africa's current government is a government of 10 parties, so it's a coalition government. It came into power last year. And the opportunity in the negotiation is to present the new South African government, the post-2024 government, as a multi-party government, not an ANC majority government. That is why it was so important to bring in the non-ANC members of parliament and members of the national government and to have people like John Steenhuisen there. Then we also had a couple of golfers. We had Retief Goosen and Ernie Els, great South African golfers, and we know that Trump himself, loved golf. And both of these two golfers who worked there are very much respected by Trump, and they're also great patriots of South Africa. So it was important, and I have to remind you, viewers, South Africa is the world's most diverse society, and the government of national unity that we have now, this national coalition government, is actually more representative of South Africa's diversity. We are not a monocolor culture or a monopolitical society. We are a diverse society. So it is very important in these critical negotiations that a diversity of South Africa's talents are in the room to negotiate.
William, just very, very quickly, I'm just going to throw to you actually a quick soundbite from Steenhuisen, the head of the opposition, used to be the opposition Democratic Alliance, who spoke very clearly against this narrative of there being a white genocide, saying that, the violence that the farming community experiences actually affects a much wider cross-section of society. If we can just launch that clip from Steenhuisen.
South Africa. Of course, there has been a situation in some farms where farm workers themselves were killed, including some farmers, but it has affected both black and white for years. That's why we came up with a rural safety strategy, But there is no genocide at all.
Well, that was not Steenhuisen. That was, and actually, it's probably better it was, players, because what a day to speak to South Africa's vice president, because just hours before that very, high, tense meeting between Trump and Ramaphosa, I actually was lucky enough to have a chat with Vice President Mashatile, who's actually in Paris, and I asked him about this question of the Afrikaners, and a very calm, very straightforward conversation, which is in such contrast with what finally transpired. We're going to have to leave it, William, but before I let you go, how do you think this is going to go down in South Africa? Did he do well, Ramaphosa?
I think he did fair. It could have been worse. And I think, this type of negotiations, one has to be open and transparent and acknowledge the wrongs, not to be defensive. And to his credibility, he brought a diverse group of South Africans together. Not all of them agree. Like also, that's the nature of South Africa. You can't have one view in the world's most diverse society. I think that was important. I think, it laid a good basis for the rest of the negotiations.
William Gumede, Professor of Practice in Witwatersand. Thank you so much for giving us a bit of perspective on that very tense conversation between